Oh man, got me a flat. Now what? Guess I'm gonna have to change it before I go for my ride today. Oh, here we go. What to do?
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles.
Hello, welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles. Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin, the guy. Obviously, I have a garage shop. Taking scary out of used bikes, one bike at a time.
If you like these videos, please like and subscribe.
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hey, I'm Justin, the guy. I had a question from one of my many followers, and all hundreds of them. They went for a ride, and guess what? They got a flat when they got back. Well, flats are just, let's just face it, flats are gonna be a part of your cycling experience. Bottom line, it's gonna happen regardless. It's road, mountain, hybrid, whatever. There's flat prevention opportunities to put in thicker tubes, liners, better tires, all those things. But I figured I'd take advantage of that question and add to those, but really add to not necessarily how to fix a flat, but how to diagnose it. There's a lot of different videos out there, and I'm sure there's one of many, but I figured I'd, with my particular followers, you guys asked the question, and I'm gonna answer it, even though there's a plethora of this videos out there. So, usually 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be the rear wheel. Why? Mainly because all your weight's on the back, and when you're cruising along, you may miss the object. Whatever you're trying to avoid when you're riding, you'll hit it with your rear tire. So that's where you can get a flat on your ride, or you come, go out in the garage, you're gonna grab your bike and go for a ride. Oh, man! Because it's usually, you got a short window of time to do your exercise, and you just lost 20 minutes of it right there. Thinking about that. So how to do this quickly, on the road or in the shop or on the floor of your garage. It would be nice to have a stand, but I try to find somewhere on my path where I can lean the bike up and hang it up, sometimes a fence post or something like that if possible, or a bench. That usually works out really well. What you first want to do, especially in the rear, the front is going to be easier, but the rear, you want to knock that, your shifting is going to be up. You want to knock it down to your small skier in the back, all the way out. Reason being that is going to stay, out of the way of the wheel when it drops out. And you flip your lever up for your release, or on a mountain bike, you release your brakes, then you do your quick release, and that drops the rear wheel out. Since you left it on a small cog, taking it off, when you put it back on, you know where to go from there. So this guy, let's pretend it's flat. So I got myself a flat situation. My dad would say, flattery never got you anywhere. So here we go. Basically, a press the valve is this kind of guy here. You need to unscrew this out to release the air or air back in. When you're done, you tighten that booger back up. This little grommet here basically holds the valve core straight. Not totally necessary. It's nice to have. Same thing with the valve cap. Not necessary, but it's nice to have. So don't get hung up on that if you lose it inside of the weeds of the road. So you got your wheel. You got it off. I got a flat. Now what? Well, you gotta have tire levers. 1 or 2, or some of these are just a 1 lever will do it. And what you do is you work the tire to one end so you have a little bit extra gap on this side where you can put your tool in. And if you're lucky enough, you can just slide it like so. So here is the very important bit. You want to keep track where this tire and tube is relation to the wheel. Okay, what I mean by that is when you take this apart, you want to keep it like in order. Reason being is you want to be able to track down that flat. So you go and you pry the other side off, but don't take it off all the way yet. Hold off a second. I know you're over anxious to get this thing fixed and whatever, but this will keep you from having repeat flats. Because if you don't get the contaminant out or identify what was the cause and what area of it, you may be giving yourself more flats down the road, multiple flats during a ride even. So I have this kind of hanging with the valve core, and you notice the professional touch is you'll put your valve core by the logo. The reason being is in relation to the wheel this tire is going to be. So I kind of like to hold this in my hand like this, put the wheel down so the valve core is still up. I'm still looking at the same tire in the same angle and direction, and I'm pulling the tube out. Keeping all in mind, it's all in the same. Okay, but I still have the same position. So I kept in the same position, and that's in position. So I have both of them down on my leg, holding up, and I take my pump, which you're in the garage, you're gonna use a floor pump. If you're on the road, you're gonna use a little hand pump or CO2 pump, but you just wanna air it up a little bit. So it holds shape. This is very important. It's holding shape. And if it's a fast leak, you'll hear it immediately. It'll go out, so you know where it is. And that's where you can identify where the flat happened. In this case, if it's a pinhole, which the person that asked the question or overnight, it's usually a small puncture. And if you air it up and you kind of listen for it or feel for it in your skin, where that hole or air might be seeping out of, if you still don't feel it, air it back up some more so it's even bigger. Don't worry, you're not going to pop it. You're already a dead tube. And you're like, oh, okay. Then that way you can identify it. Let's say it's right here, and I feel a leak or whatever. So I know it's right here in relation. So what's that going to be on here? Well, if it's on the outside of the tube, it might be the tire. So you might want to inspect that tire in that area where the flat is. Feel inside carefully and not poke yourself, but feel inside and see if there's anything sticking through. It could be a very, very small, like a piece of metal or a piece of glass. And you want to make sure that's smooth and double check. And sometimes you'll just see the hole where something popped in and popped out, and you're like, okay. So what you're doing is you're cleaned the tire area for any potential future flats. So if that is clear, and if it's on the inside of the tire tube when it's flat, you might want to check your rim tape and make sure it's covering all those holes. Because if it's not, this is high pressure. So you're talking about 100, 110 psi per square inch in that area. If this tape is not holding, it's compromised and sucks into the wheel rim, it's going to cut your tube. So you want to double check that has even coverage. And if you identify like, oh, there's a hole or whatever, okay, you eliminated the rim being a cause of the flat. And it's a good time to double check it all here, make sure the rest of the rim tape is safe. Then identify that the tire, or you figured out where maybe the cut is or the hole is, especially if it's small. If it's big, it might be a gash in the tire. And then you're in kind of a little world of hurt where you may have to have a boot or a dollar bill you wrap around your new tube and kind of stuff it in there to hold pressure, not to 100 psi, to maybe about 40 to at least to get you home. So if it's a pinhole, so you got two options. You replace it with a new tube that you may have in your pack, or you can patch it. Typically, a lot of people like to save these, they'll put them in their jersey and they'll grab the new tube and put the new tube in there. Okay, so when you're putting this back together, you know, if this is a brand new tube and it's flat, you want to add a little air to it like we just did to identify it, like so. Just a little bit to hold shape. Then you want to do the pros tip and put that valve where that logoing is, so you can do identifying later on, and also makes the tire, you know, the wheel look professional, but mainly is to identify that problem area. It's hard to do when I'm just standing up straight up. Here we go, ish. You can lay it in there like so, or you can put the first bead in. So this is one way of doing it. You can get it in there, and it's all set and ready to go. And you take your wheel. So sometimes these are directional, so you want to look for that stamp if there is directional arrow. An arrow means forward. So since the cogs on the side is going to be going forward, and you're going to first cog side up, put your valve in, and the first side of the bead, you want to put it over. And sometimes you can just use your hands to do this. And when you get to that really tricky bit, you can kind of force that last piece over. And here's another little gold nugget is you want to roll that tube over the wheel well so it's over inside of it, not on the outside. That way, the likelihood of you pinching that tube will be less. In this case, you may have to let out a little bit of air so the tire is more pliable. Then you put your wheel tire lever in there again, work it around, and always work on the opposite side of the valve core to start off with, because you don't want to be fighting that valve core when you're trying to get the tire bead in. Okay, so we got the bead in on both sides. Then I like to push this in. Make sure it's not stuck underneath the bead of the tire. So you push that in so it then comes back out. Then you take your pump or your CO2 cartridge pump or your hand pump, put it back on there. Give it a little bit of air, not full pressure yet. Then you want to double check your bead. Make sure it's seated correctly and even all the way around. Then you proceed to air it up to the maximum amount. Okay, 4 pumps in the garage, you can get to the pressure that you desire, like 100 PSI or 110 PSI. Don't exceed what the max limit is on the actual tire itself. On the road, a hand pump, you can be lucky you get 60 PSI. So that's just gonna get you home, basically, the little hand pump, because it just takes forever to fill up to that high pressure. You're gonna get tuckered out. So 60 PSI is fine, as long as when you're riding home, you're very careful not to run into curbs or anything of that nature. A CO2 is more of the preferred choice. Reason being is you can air it up to higher pressure. It'll get you around 80 or 90 PSI with one cartridge. And that way you can continue your ride and ride the rest of your ride and not have to worry about it. Having those cartridges though, it's a one-shot deal. Once it's used up, it's used up. So it's usually good to have 2 or 3 extra ones in the bill of pack to go with it. So it's a little more compact, lightweight, and a little bit easier to use. So when you're done with that, airing it up, you want to tighten up this grommet so it's tighter. And if you haven't lost your little bits, then you put your press the valve nut back on so it's snug, holds that valve core up right. Then you put your cap back on, and since you put it back on your small cog, you know where to go. As you pull the derailleur hanger down, lay that small chain on the small cog, roll it back up, and maybe loosen up your quick release a little bit so it gets in there, and you tighten it back down until it catches halfway. And don't forget to redo your brakes, make sure they're tight. So here's the safety thing. Check your brake, make sure it's not rubbing. And also before you hit that road, kind of go through the gears if you can. Being propped up or a buddy holding the bike for you or whatever. Just make sure it's going in all those gears. And boom, you're ready to go for your ride. So that's how you fix a flat. The trick is identifying that pinhole or cut or slice or whatever may have caused it. If it's aired up and you see a bulge or something like that, inspect it before you go back on the road. Make sure in that area that you put it back together, it's not going to cause that flat again. Safety first. Okay, all worst case scenario, call someone to pick you up. But hopefully you can get back on the road, at least lengthen your ride, or at least get back home and not worry about it. And also, you're coming to the garage, ready to ride, and oh shucks, there it is, big old flat. And it's gonna be a rear one. And also, if when you're having dinner, and all of a sudden you're like eating, and you hear this BAM! And you're like, what the heck is that? Sometimes these blow out, and it is loud. And it will startle you. It's usually kind of funny when you're in the shop, and you're like working in the back, and all of a sudden a tire pops on the sales floor, and you're like, what was that? And you know exactly what it is. But at home, you're like, what is that noise? Check your bikes. Maybe one of the tires popped off. And sure enough, you go and you're like, oh. And hopefully it's not the one you're going to be riding real soon and you have time to fix it. So, again, tire lever, floor pump for the garage, pump for on the bike or in your pack that goes in there, an extra tube, tire levers. I probably said that twice. either patch kits or a glueless patch kit is fine too. And it's also good to invest a little boot or put a dollar bill in there. It'll shred the dollar bill, so that will be no bueno. You'll take it to the bank in 8 little pieces, but at least it'll get you home. So buy that little boot patch that fits in there, that kind of thing. And hey, you got gloves like this, throw a pair in there too, because man, you start getting into this chain, it's gonna be all over you. Anyway, if you like videos like this, hey, subscribe to my channels. Like it if you like it. Thanks for spending time with me from the garage. Have a great day.